and that is to keep New Yorkers safe, to address the climate issues that require a lot of research and innovation and a lot of thought leadership. And I want to thank the people who help us here. I want to thank our Commissioner, Jackie Bray. You'll be hearing from her, our Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. Dr. Nick Basil, the Director of the Weather Risk Communication Center and Mesonet, which is really important. I just had a tour a few minutes ago. I had a chance to thank the team here to talk about all the work that they're doing as well. And I want to thank Dr. Rodriguez for hosting us here once again. Summer is supposed to be a time of joy, a time to slow down, spend time with family, make memories, time for kids to build lasting memories, and sometimes go to summer camps. This week we're reminded of how fragile that sense of joy and happiness can be when we saw the devastating floods in the Texas Hill Country that have destroyed so many lives and so many families, dozens of children, over 100 fatalities and over 200 people still unaccounted for statewide. And I cannot imagine that feeling of waking up every day and not knowing where your child is, your family member. It's excruciating. It's devastating. And I know I speak on behalf of all New Yorkers when I say our heart breaks for everyone who's been thrown into this chaos, this tragedy, this sadness. Those in Texas, as well as North Carolina, New Mexico, and we truly mourn all these devastating losses. And we're helping. You know, I said, what can New York do? They have a system where they put out a request for assistance from the beginning, and we've been waiting to be able to deploy our resources, and we've deployed 4 state troopers, but most importantly, our 3 specially trained canines to assist with recovery. And I'm sure they're going to have some powerful stories to tell when they return. And I want to thank them and express my deep gratitude for all the first responders from New York and elsewhere who stepped up to help our friends in crisis. We're always there. This is New York's way. We're always there to help when these events call for us. But here at home, my first thought was, are we ready? What if the exact same events unfolded in the state of New York? Are we prepared? Would we have warning systems? Could we avert this horrible loss of life? And so I immediately call on Commissioner Bray, who is our emergency management expert, but also a former chief of staff from the National Weather Service, which comes into play hourly. And I said, I want to come here, I want a briefing, I want to make sure that our team is on top of this because there is no room for a mistake or a failure when people's lives are on the line. And here's the situation. Don't even call it extreme weather anymore. This is weather. This is the normal weather that we're experiencing. And it's a shame. This was forecasted by thought leaders decades ago, that if mankind didn't stop its assault on Mother Nature, there'd be revenge. Well, Mother Nature is getting her revenge now. And that's what we're dealing with. You know, it grows more destructive every single year. And since I became governor toward the end of 2021, not 1, but 2 hurricanes in my first couple of weeks on the job, still putting a team in place, still hiring my emergency management team. The 2 hurricanes, snowstorms of an epic scale, historic scale of snowstorms and deadly storms like we witnessed in Buffalo a few years ago. An earthquake in New York City, extreme drought, record-breaking heat, 20 brush fires, wildfires. We never had wildfires in the state of New York. And guess how many tornadoes we've had? 37 tornadoes in the last 18 months. That was more than all of Tornado Alley combined. And we've already had 5 this year, including just this past week. In the town of Phelps, I called the supervisor. We deployed people, and a number of homes had their roofs blown off. So we're not here to alarm people, but we need to be vigilant. And I want people to know about our preparation and what response system we have in place here. And right now, for New York, there's no active weather warnings in effect, so this is not what this purpose is. But I'm not waiting until tragedy strikes to make sure New Yorkers are reassured of how we're managing this. First of all, we invest. We invest enormous dollars ahead of time. We also spend time, and I met the people who do this. They track every possible storm, whether it's a raindrop coming down, whether it's a flash flood, whether it's a tornado, hopefully more rare, whether it's thunderstorms. They track them, and we take them very seriously. And we rely on the best science and the best people, starting right here at UAlbany's building, the E-Tech building that we're in. This is home to the state's Weather Risk Communications Center. It's a big word, big sentence. I was here with Al Roker when we first opened. He was so impressed with this place. There's nothing like this in the country. When you walk in these doors, you think, oh, of course, it's a nice building. They're doing some work here. Does it matter? It matters, and nobody else takes this as seriously in the entire country as we do in the state of New York, and I'm proud of that. We also have the National Weather Services offices here. We're across the street from the state's Emergency Operations Center. When there's a crisis, all these systems coordinate together. That's the beauty of this. And we have the first partnership of its kind funded by the state of New York, bringing together top meteorologists, atmospheric scientists, social scientists, and emergency managers to deliver real-time information. That is everything. Everything relies on timeliness, speed you get it to them before and after the storms. And so we track this and make sure that our state and local decision makers have everything they need. And so this center is designed to take federal forecasts and make sure that people on the ground understand them. But this is really critical that we invest. So invest, what does that mean? It means money. You know what just happened this week? Just this week, this center was told they're losing $3 million to do their work. Thank you, Washington, D.C. The same week people's lives are being lost because of catastrophic storms, you tell us that we just lost $3 million. FEMA, we've lost money. FEMA has lost a lot of money across the country. Hundreds of meteorologists have lost their jobs across the country, and so many other key programs. And so what I was talking about is the Department of Homeland Security. They canceled a $3 million grant to the Mesonet researchers right here at UAlbany. This grant was awarded 2 years ago. Develop emergency management tools using data from the statewide system, and a loss of about 12 positions. 12 people that are saving lives with their work here today will not be able to stay because the federal government has different priorities, obviously, right? We know what they are. Making sure that the wealthiest in the nation have tax cuts. That's why this program is being cut. So while the president is de-investing in the safety of Americans, we are investing. 15 months ago, we expanded the Office of Emergency Management. We doubled our field staff. We committed $15 million to help localities. And I come out of local government. You hear me say this all the time. How important it is that our localities have what they need as well, because that's where the action happens. And make sure there's flood barriers and high flow pumps and generators. I mean, the generator is the most precious device in any kind of storm. And those preparations mean the difference between a disaster and withstanding a disaster and resilience. So we made grants available last year. Last year I toured a lot of the flooded areas, and I knew what people needed. They needed grants. They needed money to help rebuild their homes. And we committed $11 million in emergency services. This year, another $3.5 million to rehabilitate homes that are being destroyed by tornadoes. Guess what, my friends? We never had to worry about rebuilding homes after tornadoes because we didn't get them. They were such a rarity. And now it's becoming another fact of life in New York that we have tornadoes and have to help communities rebuild. And yesterday I announced a $21 million program in flood protection projects in the southern tier. Floods, they were devastating. You know, I stood with a family on the shoreline and watched their home literally sinking into the river, and they knew that that house that they had built, this young couple, built it with their own hands when we talked to them. And I was crying. I mean, they're just like, this is everything. We saved all of our money for to build this house. You know, his dad helped build, his mom helped build it. Everybody, it was a whole family pride to build their home, and it was gone. So we announced more money to help in those areas as well. So I'm setting the course. I mean, I'm not blind to the fact that this is what is going to be our daily existence, our regular existence, and there'll be more extreme weather events to come in the future. But our state budget has to build on this, and we're continuing our work with climate-smart communities, helping communities adapt to climate change, and that's why we have a $40 million Resilient and Ready program. In May, we introduced the 333-111. This is our real-time emergency system. Anyone in the state of New York can now text the name of their county or borough to 333-111, 4 ones, and get critical responses to their questions. So we're going to continue piloting these programs, make sure that people have what they need. Our tabletop exercises, I participated in a number of them, what it looks like when you have all the professionals around a room. It's very impressive. And I sit there and they bring data to me based on a scenario that is often based in facts from elsewhere, and how they tell me how they respond to it, and I have to answer questions on how I want actions taken. So in light of these tragedies, I've asked my team to tabletop exactly what happened in Texas. I want that played out here with my professionals. I want the answer on how we would have dealt with that. What would have made the difference? Anything we could have done? Any lessons learned? Because that perhaps is the only positive takeaway from that kind of tragedy, is that others can learn and make sure that tragedy is averted in the future. So basically it's all about protecting people, all about protecting New Yorkers, their lives, their families, their homes. And whether it's the wildfires or hurricanes or heat waves or flash floods, our mission is the same, keeping people safe. And how we do that? We act before it's too late, and to make sure that no family ever has to endure what we have seen unfold on television this past week. With that, I want to turn it over to Commissioner Bray, and who'll share how the state is responding to disasters and how families can be prepared as well. Commissioner Bray.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you not only for joining us here today, but for your leadership over the last 3 years when it comes to preparedness and response to disasters. I want to talk about two things. The first is I want New Yorkers to understand what we do with information and how we're prepared and how our system works. And so when we get alerts from the National Weather Service or forecasts from the National Weather Service, our team at the Office of Emergency Management coordinates to take those forecasts with the State Weather Risk Communication Center and to make sure that we have actionable pieces of information and decision support to provide for our counties and our cities and our local leaders so that they then can make sure that the alerts and the warnings are getting out to where they need to be. It is our job to support our localities, to support our counties, to make sure that they've got the information they need, and not only that they have that information, but they're making decisions to save lives, to save property. I also want to talk about what New Yorkers can do to prepare. So the first thing I want to say is that every single one of us on our phones has an ability to receive emergency alerts. When you get your phone, it comes already selected on. Many people turn it off. It's really important to keep it on. So if you go into your settings and you go to your notifications and you scroll down to the bottom of notifications, you can make sure that your emergency alerts are set to on. I show up after storms all the time and people will say, I didn't get an alert, and I will grab their phone and I will open it and I will go to settings and notifications and scroll to the bottom, and they've turned it off. And so I want New Yorkers, turn it back on. Sometimes it might mean that you get an Amber Alert, right, that isn't anywhere near you and you feel like it's not related to you. But it's really important that when an emergency hits, we are able to reach you. So grab your phone, go to your settings, go to your notifications, turn emergency alerts on. And that's our first key, is stay alert, right? Make sure your phone notifications are on. Sign up for our notification system by texting your county or your borough to 333-111. Make sure you're tuned in to your radio or your apps or your TV when weather is going on, including if you're going on vacation, right? If you're going somewhere, check the weather before you go. That's number one, stay alert. Number two is to be prepared. That often means for folks to have a go bag, have an emergency preparedness kit. Here in the state of New York, we host dozens, hundreds of citizen preparedness core classes throughout the state. It's about a 90-minute program. You can sign up in your local jurisdiction. We teach you what you need to know to keep yourself and your community safe, and we also give you a pre-stocked emergency go bag. So if you want to sign up, You can go to our website, dhses.ny.gov, to sign up for a Citizens Preparedness Corps locally. Even if you don't sign up, have a go bag, right? Know where you need to grab extra water, extra food, your medication, your pet's medication, your pet's food, flashlights, things like that. And then finally, make a plan. If you got an alert in the middle of the night and it said, get to higher ground, do you know which way you're going out of your apartment, which way you're going out of your house, and where you're going? For me, about 20 yards, 30 yards out my front door is a creek that floods all the time, right? So I know if I got that alert, if I got that message, I'm going out my back door and up my hill. But it takes a second to think about that. Think about that now. Stay alert, be prepared, make a plan. And finally, I just really quickly want to address what's happening to our federal partners. Emergency management across this country has been, for decades, a partnership between localities and states and the federal government. Whether it's FEMA or it's the National Weather Service, we rely on the federal government for information, for intelligence, and for resources to prepare for events and to then help communities recover from events. It is exactly the wrong time to disinvest in these types of programs. We at the state of New York take emergency management incredibly seriously. We invest in emergency management, but we cannot do it alone. We need our federal partners to continue to invest. Right now, the Department of Homeland Security federally it has not released over $2 billion worth of grants to states and counties and cities that are intended to help people prepare, including about $350 million of grants that are specifically for emergency management preparedness, including about $15 million that usually comes to New York State for emergency management, over half of which goes out to our counties and our cities to help them be ready. It's just the wrong time to stop making these investments, and we need our federal partners to be partners like they've been for decades. I want to now introduce Dr. Nick Basil from the State Weather Risk Communication Center.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Governor Hochul, and thank you, Commissioner Bray. It's great to host you all at the University at Albany's E-Tech building. We're all grieving the tremendous loss of life due to the flooding in Texas, and we extend our sincere sympathies for all those suffering. This tragic event reinforces our need to have a strong and healthy relationship between those experts in the weather community, emergency managers, and ultimately the citizens we serve and wish to keep safe. Thankfully, New York is leading the nation when it comes to demonstrating how the relationship between weather experts, state emergency management, and the public can work successfully. We've created a model that benefits New Yorkers. This is critical because Mother Nature sends more diverse weather at New York than any other state. We're the only state in the entire country that can have a hurricane land on our ocean shores while lake effect snow slams our Great Lakes shores just weeks later. Of course, we get all other sorts of hazardous weather, everything in between, ice storms, heat waves, everything. This wide variety of hazardous weather presents great challenges to us meteorologists and first responders alike. 2 years ago, Governor Hochul and Commissioner Bray had the foresight to create what is now the New York State Weather Risk Communication Center, located right here at UAlbany in this building, this E-Tech building, across from our state's Office of Emergency Management. So we're very conveniently located to all the key players. Our 10-member staff is tasked with serving the state's public weather interests, working closely with state agencies and authorities, as well as county and local emergency managers. We also have the benefit of existing at an excellent research and teaching institution here at UAlbany, which means we're well equipped to take that expertise and those tools generated here and efficiently apply them to real-world problems we have in New York. One of those assets is the New York State Mesonet, which is a world-class weather observation network deployed here in New York in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. That network is celebrating 10 years in operation this year. In-house, at our center, we're developing tools that will simplify our state's operations that are impacted by weather. We're embarking on weather training events to streamline how our state's emergency managers interpret the weather information they receive from our great partners at the National Weather Service. For example, we work closely with our state's swiftwater rescue teams to pre-position them in advance of a potential flash flood so they'll be able to be on the scene faster. We also create tailored weather briefings, lots of them, that add context to the already excellent National Weather Service forecasts In the past year, we've created and sent over 900 briefings to various state partners. I want to be clear, we are not the National Weather Service, nor do we seek to replace them. They are fundamental to much of what we do here at the State Weather Risk Communications Center. So let me end by sharing what we have to look forward to weather-wise in the rest of 2025. On average, the hottest time of the whole summer is over the next 2 weeks. With that said, I'd like to hope that the heat wave we all experienced, or most of us experienced near the end of June, will end up being the hottest period during the summer, but we still have a lot of summer left to have some extreme heat. In August, we transition into the heart of the hurricane season, which currently is projected to be above normal when all things are said and done. It doesn't take a hurricane landfall on our shores to cause significant damage to New York. Debbie and Beryl are two examples from just last year, and Ida the 2 years before that. All storms that did not make landfall on our shores, but caused significant and destructive flooding and loss of life in New York. In addition to our beautiful foliage, fall can bring significant wind and rainstorms, which are often exacerbated by clogged drains due to leaves. So another preparedness tip, Commissioner Bray, clear out your leaves from your gutters when it gets to be fall and the storm drains. While many recent winters have lacked significant nor'easter, kind of those classic overnight, during the day, long duration snowstorms for much of us here in eastern New York, the citizens of western New York have been inundated by massive lake effect storms for the past several years. Our Great Lakes are currently a little warmer than average, some places much warmer than average, and so if that holds, this pattern may repeat itself this winter, unfortunately. But don't worry, Governor, we at our center will try our best to make sure those Bills games go on right as planned. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the words of both of you, and hopefully it inspires confidence that you can get out to our constituents, how laser focused we are on deploying all the resources available, but also no other state doing what we do to be able to predict and analyze the weather in order to keep people safe. So I want to thank both of them. Any on-topic questions for while I still have these individuals here?
Any on topics, guys? Alex?
Governor, you mentioned that these weather events are being made worse by climate change. There's reporting out this week that your administration is backing off of some of the goals set out in the CLCPA. How do you square those two, and how does New York get to environmental stability?
We are. Look how we compare to other states, number one. You know, we are very focused on making sure that we do our part, but other states have to play a role as well when you think about that. So one state cannot solve the climate crisis. We are often the collateral damage, as you talked about, hurricanes that have hit landfall elsewhere, and we are paying for that with disasters here. We're just dealing in reality. I mean, those goals remain. They're statutory. I believe we'll hit many of them, especially our longer term ones. We're on a path towards sustainability. That's why you heard me talk about, my fight to save offshore wind. Unfortunately, because of decisions made in Washington, I believe that there'll be a setback in some of the initiatives that we've leaned hard into, and that these goals were predicated on offshore wind and solar really emerging as primary energy sources. What I have to deal is the reality that with a president that's hostile to those interests and has told me directly that how do we pretend that the goals will be met when all the incentives to invest in those industries has dissipated. I mean, I'm just dealing in reality here. And also the supply chain challenges that slow down the advent of offshore wind during the pandemic. And now everything costs more because of inflation. And we have tariffs, so we're at war with the countries that provide the steel and the materials for turbines. So I'm a very pragmatic person, but I'm not giving up on the aspirations of ensuring that we meet these goals. It just will not be on the immediate time frame because of factors outside our control.
Great. Any other comments?
You talked about
Jason, sorry, Jason.
in terms of federal help to be prepared for emergencies and disasters. I saw your letter, Governor, to Kristi Noem about funding not being available for more counterterrorism and other potential emergencies. Can you tell me a little bit, why do you think the federal government isn't making this money available?
it's a basic hostility towards states, particularly blue states. We are the ones that have been targets of terrorism attacks more than others. And I believe that, their priorities are very misguided, that they should have an interest in making sure that we have all the resources to protect the financial epicenter of our nation, as goes New York City and particularly Wall Street and what we do, the wealth generated here has a ripple effect on creating jobs and opportunities across the nation. So it's very short-sighted in my opinion. But you'll have to ask them, like, why would you not want to, especially with the unrest and, what's going on with Iran and Israel, and us having a large Jewish population and a large Muslim population here. I mean, we are vulnerable. We are very vulnerable. This is the last time that you should be doing this. You should be beefing it up. And so, Commissioner, you want to talk about exactly what we're losing with the
Sure.
from here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as the governor talked about in her letter, there are really 3 grant programs that the federal government right now has not released to the states. Those would normally be released in mid-May. It's the Urban Area Security Initiative that really funds over $100 million for the NYPD's counterterrorism and intelligence mission. It funds NASA and Suffolk and Westchester and the Port Authority and the MTA. It's the state Homeland Security Grant Program. That program funds bomb squads and tactical teams all across the state of New York. And then it's the Emergency Management Grant Program, which funds, really, it funds our ability. It doesn't fund, like, for us, it's not funding the people, right? That the governor is sustaining. It's funding the training and the equipment that those people use. And so it's about $2.3 billion nationally. It's about 300, give or take, million in New York State. I am hopeful. I still want to believe that the federal government will do the right thing here and release these grants and release them quickly. But it certainly is incredibly concerning for people in my job across the whole country, the fact that we may not have the partnerships to rely on.
You said blue states. Are you saying that this might be an intentional?
No, I'm just saying that blue states, like a place like New York, we are at more of a risk of a terrorism attack because of the reasons I outlined, but also precedent, 9/11, anyone? So we are reliant on that money more than other states. And so when that money stops, they're hurting a state like New York. And again, there's politics behind everything they're doing. Okay, there is politics behind everything they're doing. They're talking, why is California still waiting for FEMA dollars longer than other states that have had disasters months later when so much of California was devastated by those horrible, horrible fires? So you be the judge. Look at the facts. Tell me the states that are getting assistance and those that aren't. It's pretty obvious.
Jimmy, did you have another one?
Yeah, Governor, you talked about the State Weather Risk Communication Center. Can you connect that to what happened in Texas? I mean, what would that allow the state of New York to do that maybe didn't happen in Texas?
That's exactly what I'm asking. That's why I'm here today. That's why I directed that there be a tabletop exercise using all the data of the circumstances that happened in Texas. And my question is, with all the resources we have here, is there something we would have done differently? And if not, make sure we do. We are prepared. And it's all about how you react to circumstances. You can ignore that or just say, well, that was another state. I'm a different kind of leader. I'm saying, come on, team. We've got a lot invested here. We have a lot of talented people, a lot of expertise. How do we make sure that fate never befalls people in our own state? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I would thank you, ma'am. Absolutely. I would say 2 things. The first thing is it's really clear that you have to invest ahead of time, right? If you have 2 hours, 3 hours in the middle of the night notice on a catastrophic flash flood, there are only limited things that you're going to be able to do. And so one of the things the State Weather Risk Communication Center will help us do, has helped us do, is really understand where are we particularly vulnerable and what do we have to do to reduce those vulnerabilities, to mitigate those vulnerabilities. They'll continue to do that. They're going to look, along with our Division of Environmental Conservation, at all of our watersheds, all of the flash flood potential, to make sure that we understand who has warning systems, who doesn't have warning systems, how do we invest early. That's so clear that the last 3 hours is not when you want to be worried about what you didn't invest in, right? And then the second thing is that when you have either short notice events or no notice events or rapidly developing events, you rely on your local emergency managers and your local first responders. And so we need to be able as a state, and this center is helping us train all of them to know what to do, to know how to take action. We have read all of the emergency warnings that have come out, right? I think so many of us around the country spent a lot of time over the last several days reading all of those and asking ourselves. I've asked myself, if I saw that at 1:14 in the morning, what would I have done? And part of what the State Weather Risk Communication Center helps us do is be able to understand those warnings ahead of time so that when we see them in the middle of the night, we know exactly what to do with them.
Yes, Governor, a few years ago, as you know, there were 47 people who died in the Buffalo storm. How would the state respond to something like that? And is there any concern due to the fact that at that time it was the Biden administration, now it's the Trump administration? Is there any concern that there would perhaps be a less partnership with now administration?
I would certainly hope there would not be any lessening in the partnership. We have a photo of me on the phone with President Biden with a snowstorm behind me, calling him and asking for assistance. We received disaster assistance from the federal government. I think it was the quickest yes answer that any request has ever received in the history of the country. Whatever it was, it normally takes considerable time. I don't know what the normal length of time is, but you recall we got the answer like almost immediately. And so resources started coming very quickly. But I'm going to hope that the Trump administration and their officials, those who are still left working in this space, and I hope they don't have any more layoffs and cuts because all of us are in jeopardy if that continues, that they would understand that every life matters regardless of whether or not their state leans Democrat or Republican.
But is the state prepared for an event like that now?
Yes, yes. We have had exercise after exercise and analysis after action reports on that horrific event. And this is the expert to describe just at a high level some of the actions we would take.
Yeah, a couple things. One, during that event, the substations froze. So when we had fatalities and people died actually in their homes who froze to death, partly what was going on is substations literally froze. And so even when we got there, they were frozen. We couldn't restart the power for a while. Those substations are all now reinforced and have the technology they need to not allow that to ever happen again. They have blocking screens and stuff like that. Number two, Buffalo has an emergency manager. They didn't have an emergency manager at the time. That is a job that had been sort of folded into their fire department, and that was a big finding in the AAR that they needed an emergency manager. They have that. Rochester since has also hired an emergency manager. And then I would say number three, we learned a lot about how we communicate. For example, many of us said over and over again, wherever you are Thursday night is where you're going to wake up Sunday morning. You cannot travel. People heard that to mean I can't get in my car. And a lot of people walked places. And we have adjusted our language, right? Do not leave your home. It is, you can be blinded by the snow and not be able to make it 2 blocks sort of thing. And so there's a lot of stuff that we've learned that we've now integrated into what we do.
All right, guys, thanks. We'll move to some off topics, but if you could give us a minute to excuse our guests.
All right, thank you.
All of our staff have been all being in.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. But you can all take note of this map behind me, which shows all the weather disasters that we've experienced. These are our tornadoes. These are our fires. That's the trajectory of Tropical Storm Debbie. This is very cold records, very high records, so I've had to become the master of disasters as governor of the state. As you said, more diverse weather events than any state. I don't know that we'll expect a tsunami, but short of that, we've seen it all.
All right, we took quite a few on topics, we'll just do a couple off topics.
Please, let
One
me ask.
second, Dan, I'm sorry, Mark, hold on, Dan had his hand up first, the other off topic.
Governor, nice to see you.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. You have about a year and a half left in your term. Lieutenant Governor is
Well, this
now-
term.
Yes,
Okay.
this term. The Lieutenant Governor is now actively campaigning against you, criticizing you on social media. Do you think that he should step down now to give you time to pick somebody else to get ready for that next term?
It is his decision how long he stays. I think the people know what's been going on. I continue to be laser focused on serving the people of New York, even though I'm, in a sense, short-staffed by not having a partner who's out there as an ally. But we're managing quite well.
Nick, go ahead.
Governor, how have your conversations with Zoran Mamdani been going since the primary, and do you plan to endorse him at this point?
No, I told him, I'm going to be having more conversations. They were very productive. I commended him on the extraordinary effort of his campaign and how he inspired, thousands of young people that have not participated in the electoral process before. I've always wanted that. I'm old enough to remember at a time when you had to be 21 to vote. And members of my family, older members of my family, were being sent to fight in a draft in Vietnam at 18, but not able to have a beer or to vote for president. So I think it's about time that young people understand how important elections are, and I think that energy was important. We have a lot of common interests. We've talked, and I've seen him reinforce on his social media my efforts on affordability. People in this state know that I drove this budget hard because I was not going to leave until I could offer about $5,000 of relief for people with families and let them know we understand what they're going through. I mean, the cost of groceries and utility bills and, back to school clothes in a couple of months. I mean, it's hard on families. And so we found some common ground there, but also there's areas where I vehemently disagree with his positions when it comes to Israel. I conveyed that the Jewish people in New York feel very insecure, and there need to be a lot of healing done. That has to happen, as well as the business community that is concerned, about what will happen with the police department. Everybody's concerned what will happen to the policing of the city, what will happen with the environment for businesses. So conversations are important. I mean, I talk to everybody, and I think that's the start. But I don't know the outcome. None of us have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen in November, but I will stand by what I've said, because you've asked me since the beginning of this past year, what will I do if certain people are elected to be mayor of New York? And my position is the same. I will work hard with whomever the voters want and guide them in a direction where they understand that the state has enormous power, but also I will not work against the success of the city of New York. I need New York City to be overwhelmingly successful on all fronts: safety, affordability, and just a general attitude that that the good days still lie ahead. And that's where I'm going to focus on, regardless who the next mayor is.
Please.
Governor, curious about your press secretary recently resigned after being accused of sexual harassment, and also a reporting came out that he was previously investigated for abusing, berating other employees. Just curious why you would have kept someone like that in your administration and broken your promise to change the culture of Albany.
No, I think what you're misunderstanding is that the culture was changed. The system worked. When there was issues that rose to the level of needing attention, that's exactly how this worked. That the environment was changed where people felt comfortable to come forward. That is a new dynamic in this city, if you've not understanding what I'm referring to. People came forward because they had been trained. People are required to be reporters when something comes to their attention. I require that there be in-person training, so you can't scroll through on your computer and pretend you're done with your training. So I was intensely focused on changing people's understanding of what constitutes the right workforce. And we have the strongest workforce protections. And it's very clear there's no tolerance for misconduct in my administration. So I'm not going to speak on specifics, but when things are investigated initially and determined that, certain things happen but not necessarily removal, okay, and things change for the better, and then something else happens that's as the likes of what arose a couple weeks ago, swift action was taken. So I would actually expect a different analysis from the press on how we have handled this versus what you witnessed probably over decades here in Albany. So I'm proud of that. And we're going to make sure that we still continue to focus on the training, the understanding that there cannot be an environment where people do not feel comfortable in the workplace. And certain things actually happen outside the workplace, way outside the workplace.
Also, Governor, I'm curious, are you going to call the legislature back to address the budget gaps
That's
from
our last question.
Washington?
I've had a lot of conversations with the leadership on what to do. We still have, this is the reconciliation, we still have the president's budget in the fall to deal with as well. So we don't have clear line of sight. We do have some indication that we're going to be short about $750 million in this year based on our previous budgeting. Again, we could not have foreseen that at the time the budget was done. And I've directed my budget director, Blake Washington, who many of you spoke to yesterday, and I met yesterday with my budget team, to first of all look internally. Let's look at our agencies, let's look at our efficiencies. I mean, what savings can we find to try to address that shortfall? And the other changes, because of the little longer runway for the changes to take effect, we have next year's budget to take a hard look. But listen, I'm ready to have the conversations, but I'm just going to be not saying right now whether I think a special session is necessary, because I don't have the clear picture until the fall budget is done. We can take. I don't think you recall that.
Can I thank you, Governor? I appreciate that. My condolences on your loss in the press room. Anyway, this is what's called a talus bag. I write for several Jewish weeklies. So this is a talus that goes in the front pocket. On the side pocket, this is being marketed for a concealed carry gun. And what do you think about congregants who might have this to bring into a synagogue with a concealed carry gun to defend themselves if someone, like in Tree of Life in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, if something like that would happen in New York? What's your reaction?
This is my first time seeing this, but my first reaction is you can also have a shooter hide a weapon very easily walking into a synagogue, which would give me even more concern. My job is to focus on public safety. We have spent a record amount of money to provide money for secure grants for synagogues and yeshivas that are vulnerable, especially at this time, and we are sensitive to this. And so that's something that, concealed carry, people have to follow the laws in our state, number one. I don't want to encourage anybody also to break the law themselves and be subjected to prosecution by breaking laws. We have our concealed carry law. Supreme Court, I won't go through the history here, but we had to come back and amend our laws to determine there are sensitive spaces, and houses of worship are sensitive spaces, and so that's not allowed in our synagogues or churches. And so that's my first reaction to seeing that, and my concern is for the safety of all people, but I know the Jewish community feels really under siege right now, and there's been a lot of incidences, far too many, and I understand that. I think everybody.
Governor, why did you defend Avi following the 2024? Everybody else gets a question except for the Post? Okay. You're not going to respond to that? Governor, why can't you respond to that question?